Imagination is one of the principal sources according to Gurdjieff, of wrong work of centers. Each center has its own form of imagination and what is called daydreaming. But as a rule, both the moving and the emotional centers make use of the thinking center, which very readily places itself at their disposal for this purpose, because daydreaming corresponds to its own inclinations. Daydreaming is absolutely the opposite of useful mental activity. Useful, and what is meant by useful in this case means activity directed towards a definite aim and undertaken for the sake of obtaining a definite result. Daydreaming does not pursue any aim. There's no aim to daydreaming. Daydreaming does not strive after any result. Because, as was said just a moment ago, daydreaming, the reason for that, daydreaming corresponds to its own inclinations. The motive for daydreaming always lies in the emotional or in the moving center. The actual process of daydreaming is carried on by the thinking center. The inclination to daydream is due partly to the laziness of the thinking center. That is to say, its attempts to avoid the efforts connected with work directed towards a definite aim and going in a definite direction. And partly to the tendency of the emotional and the moving centers to repeat to themselves, to keep alive or to recreate experiences, both pleasant and unpleasant, that have been experiences that have been previously lived through, or quote unquote here, imagined. Daydreaming of disagreeable, morbid things is very characteristic of the unbalanced state of the human machine. Of course, this imbalance such as this implies neurosis. Neurosis is always connected with imbalance. And after all, one can understand daydreaming of a pleasant kind and find logical justification for it. Daydreaming of an unpleasant character is an utter stupidity. I was going to say stupidity, but as it is written here, daydreaming of an unpleasant kind is an utter absurdity. Utter absurdity. And yet many people spend 9/10 of their lives. Many people spend 9/10 of their lives in just such painful daydreams about misfortunes which may overtake them or their family. Imagination about illnesses that they may contract, fear of catching AIDS, HIV, fear of catching a disease of one kind or another, or any other kind of sufferings that they may have to endure. Imagination and daydreaming are instances of the wrong work of the thinking center. Observation of the activity of imagination and daydreaming forms a very important part of self-study. Self-study is to catch ourselves when we are daydreaming, catch ourselves when we are in a state of imagination and fear that something may happen to us, an accident of some kind, that we may get hurt in some way. In fact, even so far as to be in fear of stepping out the front door of our own home. Daydreaming. Daydreaming is totally useless, totally absurd, as it is said here by Gurdjieff in Search of the Miraculous. So the suggestion here, of course, is to catch ourselves when in a state of daydreaming about these morbid and unpleasant things, these morbid and unpleasant possibilities of things that might happen to us. There is the idea of Cassandra in connection with, well, fear of death and daydreaming all the time that we might get into an accident and die, or that our family might get into an accident, like a car accident, auto accident on the freeway or on the highway somewhere, and get hurt and or die. This is all daydreaming. So we must take responsibility upon ourselves as individuals, and it is the work of individuality to observe these states of daydreaming, of imagination that something may happen, always afraid that something may happen. Catch ourselves in these states of fear, what is in reality psychological fear. It's not like the kind of fear when you face danger. Say you come across a bear in the woods. That's a different kind of fear, fight or flight reaction. And then you react accordingly to deal with that danger. Climb a tree to safety, that kind of thing. But what Gurdjieff is talking about here is imaginary fear, psychological fear, totally, utterly absurd, useless kind of fear, which takes up all of our time, and it's a useless, absurd waste of our time, to be in these states of daydreaming and fear.